Imagine waking up to the sound of knocking, loud, insistent, impossible to ignore. But what if the knocking wasn't coming from the door or even a person? What if it came from the walls themselves, as if the house were alive, trying to reach you? Welcome to Echoes in the Dark. It all began in August of 1977 in a modest, unassuming house on Green Street in Enfield, a suburb of London. The Hodgson family, a single mother named Peggy and her 4 children, were living a quiet, ordinary life, until the quiet shattered one night. It started with strange sounds. Peggy's 2 daughters, Janet, age 11, and Margaret, age 13, heard a mysterious knocking coming from the walls of their shared bedroom. At first, they brushed it off, blaming it on the creaky old house. But as the nights went on, the knocks grew louder and more persistent, almost like they were trying to communicate. Then, one evening, as Peggy tried to settle her children down for bed, she heard a loud crash from Janet and Margaret's room. Rushing upstairs, she found the girls wide-eyed with fear, pointing to a large, heavy chest of drawers that had moved across the floor on its own. No one else was in the room, and the chest was too heavy for either girl to push. Peggy tried to move it back, but found it impossible. The chest seemed to have been moved by an unseen force, something beyond her understanding. Determined to find answers, Peggy reached out to the neighbors. One of them, a man named Vic, came over to investigate. Together, they watched in disbelief as objects moved across the room with no one touching them. Cups and plates would fly off the shelves, toys would roll across the floor on their own, and the knocking continued, louder than ever. The family, and soon the neighbors, realized this was no ordinary disturbance. It was as if something invisible was making its presence known, a force that wasn't content to remain hidden in the shadows. When the police arrived to investigate, they couldn't even explain what they had seen. One officer claimed to have witnessed a chair slide across the floor with no one near it. But despite the strangeness of it all, the police concluded that it wasn't a case they could handle. There was no criminal activity, just an unsettling series of events. Left with no other options, Peggy turned to the press, desperate for anyone who could offer help. That's when the story of the Enfield Poltergeist spread beyond the neighborhood and caught the attention of the Society for Psychical Research. The society sent 2 experienced investigators, Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, to observe the events firsthand. Grosse and Playfair were seasoned in the paranormal and were skeptical by nature, but what they found in the Hodgson home shook even them. They witnessed chairs flipping over, marbles and Legos flying through the air with impossible speed and precision, and heard the eerie, relentless knocking that seemed to follow the family wherever they went. But the strangest of all was yet to come. One night, in the middle of their investigation, Grosse and Playfair heard a deep, raspy voice coming from Janet, the 11-year-old girl. The voice claimed to be an old man named Bill Wilkins, who had died in the house many years prior. It was like no voice an 11-year-old girl could make. And as Grosse questioned her, Janet's demeanor changed. Her voice continued in a low growl, insisting it was Bill, describing details of his life and his death. What made it even more chilling was that later, records would reveal that a man named Bill Wilkins had indeed lived in the house and had passed away there under mysterious circumstances. As the weeks wore on, the activity in the house intensified. Janet began to experience fits of levitation, witnessed by neighbors and investigators alike. They claimed to have seen her lifted from her bed, hovering in mid-air as if some invisible force had taken hold of her. Photos were taken that appeared to show her being thrown across the room, although skeptics would later claim it was all just a prank. Yet, each incident left the Hodgsons and those around them more convinced that this was no hoax. At one point, the voice claimed it would never leave the family alone. It threatened them, cursed at them, and left them in a constant state of fear. The once peaceful home had become a place of dread, where every knock and every creak was a reminder that they were not alone. The Hodgson children grew pale and tired, barely able to sleep, haunted by what they could not understand. Eventually, as the months dragged on, the activity began to fade. The poltergeist seemed to lose its grip on the household, and by the following year, the strange occurrences had all but ceased. But the Hodgsons would never forget the horror they'd endured, nor would the investigators who had witnessed it. The story of the Enfield Poltergeist left a mark on everyone involved, a lingering question that haunted them. What truly happened in that house? To this day, the Enfield Poltergeist remains one of the most documented hauntings in history, with testimonies from police officers, neighbors, journalists, and researchers alike. Yet the debate rages on. Was it all an elaborate hoax orchestrated by children seeking attention, or was there a genuine supernatural force at work in the Hodgson home? Skeptics argue that Janet and her siblings staged the events for fame and notoriety, but the sheer number of witnesses and the evidence collected suggest otherwise. Some theorize that Janet's adolescence could have caused the disturbances, a theory that suggests emotional turmoil and stress can sometimes manifest as physical disturbances. Others believe the poltergeist may have been Bill Wilkins's lingering spirit, unable to move on and determined to make his presence known. And then there are those who wonder if it was something far darker, an entity feeding off the family's fear and vulnerability. The story of the Enfield Poltergeist serves as a chilling reminder that not all mysteries can be neatly explained. Whether a trick of the mind or a brush with the supernatural, the tale of Green Street remains one of the most terrifying hauntings of modern times. So next time you hear an unexpected knock in the night, remember the Hodgson family and ask yourself, what if there's more to the world than we can see?